Well, howdy y'all, and welcome to another episode of Shrimpghost Builds. In today's video, I'll be recreating the Valentine Station from Red Dead Redemption 2 and an awesome Steam Locomotive. So, without further ado, let's get right into the video. So to start off this build, I built a simple spruce wood platform. It's 1 block tall and about 30 by 20 blocks. It's very important to get this step right, as this can affect the entire building, so I spent some time working on the actual outline before filling it in. To add some detail to the base, I put an alternating pattern of 2 upside down stairs in 1 block, and then added a fence surrounding the area. After this, I went ahead and marked out the corners for the building. I filled that in and then started building up the walls. One of the most challenging parts of this build for me was choosing the right block palette. I originally had gone with acacia wood, but after building my test model, I realized that it was way too bright and it did not fit the Wild West style. And even though it may be more accurate to the in-game version, I decided to go with the classic oak wood instead. Now that I'm done with the main structure of the building, I can go around and add some details. I filled in the windows and added small overhangs above the doors and windows, and then I built the roof. This was another very difficult part of this build, as the stairs were too steep and I couldn't get any combination of slabs right, but I finally ended up going with this design. After this, I built the main portion of the entrance. It's simply made of fences, fence gates, and stairs, arranged in the typical 1 block pattern for a roof. Now I'm building the small tower at the front of the build. I went into the game and saw that there were 3 windows on the front, but since I am restricted by the bulky blocks in Minecraft, I was only able to put 1, which looks fine, but it's not perfectly accurate. Now it's time for my favorite part of the build, details. I first went around with spruce trapdoors to add some depth, and then added a small wood pile and 2 benches at the front for passengers to sit. After this, I added some storage crates and built a small electrical pole, which you'll see in a second. Now I'm building a front platform. This will eventually be blended in with the terrain, but I have not built the building at its final resting location, so I will be using clone commands to move it over to the south end of the town. I also added some miscellaneous storage containers and extended the fence out by 3. Now I'm just building some hitching posts to attach your horse to, and this small tent that I'm assuming is to sell something. I'm not sure, but that's what it looks like. I replaced the fences with spruce because I think it fits the build a little bit more and looks more weathered. Now I used a fletching table and some birch stairs and a slab to construct a table, which I put a flower pot on top of. Now I'm just building a clock for the passengers to know what time it is, and I'm laying down the gravel to act as the railroad ballast. Now I'm just using spruce slabs to build the railroad ties, and to make the rails I'm using stone stairs. After this, I blended it into the ground and started working on the water tower. Now I'm building the water tower that provides water to the train to make steam, and I started out with a base using spruce fences, which I then connected using fence gates. Now I'm adding the wooden base for the actual reservoir to sit on. In the real world, these can only hold about 2 tenders full of water, which is 2 trains, and it would take only a few minutes to empty it, but it'd take hours for them to be filled back up with a small pump that would be attached to a creek or just a reservoir. And this is the pipe that would attach it to a water source. Now I'm adding the support for the actual spout, which would be put into the train, and then pulling it down activates it. Now that that is done, we can go on to the actual locomotive. I'd like to start this portion off with a disclaimer that I did use a tutorial for the main part of the train. I tried building it by myself and it just did not look good. I cannot build vehicles for the life of me, and I didn't want to disappoint, so I just did this, and I changed it up to look more like the train in Red Dead Redemption, just so as to not copy exactly off of the tutorial. But now that that is done, I can talk more about the actual train that this is based off of. In-game, at least in Red Dead Redemption 2, this train is a 460 or 10-wheeler based off of the Baltimore and Ohio Railroad's Thatcher Perkins. This specific locomotive was first built in 1863 and retired in 1892. As you can see in a second, this is where I diverged from the tutorial and started to build the train to look more like it does in Red Dead Redemption 2. The tutorial said to use stone bricks, but I instead used polished black stone, which I think fits the darker appearance of the train much better. I also changed the wheels, as the locomotive in-game has 3, but the one that this tutorial was based off of only has 2. Now I'm simply building the cab, which is a bit smaller than I would have liked it to be, but I think it's okay for now. Now it's time for some fun locomotive facts. This specific locomotive was used during the Civil War to carry Union troops and afterwards for passenger and freight trains. In 1892, it was preserved by the railroad and renumbered to number 282 instead of the original numbering, which was 147. Now I'm building the tender for this locomotive, which I somewhat used the tutorial for, but afterwards I completely scrapped it and built it on my own. In a real-world locomotive, the tender is used to hold both the fuel, which could be wood or coal, and a water tank, which is filled up with the water tower I built earlier. In Red Dead Redemption 2, the water tank is not present in the tenders, so I did not build it in this Minecraft build. Now I'm just going around and using concrete powder to act as a weathering effect and building the first passenger car. I did not build many cars as I was feeling kind of burnt out, and I didn't want to do a bad job. I will be building more cars as I move it to the new location, however. I also originally built this as a freight car, but then decided to make a passenger car instead because I thought that'd be more interesting. So that's why there was the sudden jump in the building progression. The side was quite difficult for me to do because I had a hard time blending the green concrete with the looms which I used to build the siding. And I also changed the roof to match the rest of the train, which is polished blackstone. Now that I'm done with that, I can start working on the interior. To start out, I built a main aisle out of spruce wood and then sides with prismarine, and then added seats all the way down. And now this should be about the end of the build, so with these few lanterns, I'm done. Overall, I'm pretty proud of this build, and I think that when I add the landscaping and more train cars, it will be twice as good. So stay tuned for part 2. And one more thing, I'm always open to suggestions, and I'm always looking for new things to build. So if you have anything that you'd like me to do, just put it in the comments below, and I might just build it. So, with that over with, if you liked the video, don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you later. Bye.